Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webcast, Give Your Clients Certainty in Uncertain Times. My name is Heather Marsh from the Chartered Banker Institute, and today I'm delighted to introduce John, Andrew, Oliver and Paul. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the online function to submit these, and we will try our best to answer as many as possible at the end of the presentation. Hope you enjoyed today's webcast, and I'll now hand you over to John.
Thank you very much, Heather. And thank you everyone for joining us for this webcast. My name's John Murray, and I manage the delivery of the Resource Efficient Scotland programme. So just to give you a bit of background to that programme, it's a programme from Zero Waste Scotland, and it's funded by the Scottish Government and the RDF. And the aim of the programme is to support Scottish small and medium-sized businesses to reduce their energy, water and raw material costs. So why should businesses be looking at this? There's a number of different reasons that small and medium-sized businesses are looking at their resource costs and how they can reduce them. First and foremost, there's legal compliance. So you've got things like the Climate Change Act, you've got Scottish landfill tax, climate change levies, and waste regulations, all already affecting small and medium-sized businesses across Scotland. But you've also got other things such as the targets for net zero by 2045 set by the Scottish Government, and cities following in their footsteps by setting their own individual targets as well. There's also other things such as TCFD, which is a task force on climate-related financial disclosures, which is coming into force to impact on big listed companies, but that will also have a trickle-down impact we expect for small and medium-sized businesses. So there's lots of legislation already impacting on small to medium-sized businesses, but there's also lots more that's likely to come in the future. So meeting the current requirements and also being ready for the future requirements is very important for those businesses. There's also, for all businesses, there's just a fundamental need to protect their profits and make sure that they're financially viable businesses. So we're seeing, energy price rises happening. We're seeing water charges also rising, and raw materials. Never mind potential impacts of things like Brexit, but businesses are seeing significant increases in their raw materials as well, and having to take action to implement that. By reducing their resource costs and their energy costs, that can immediately reduce the costs to that business, and those profits can go straight to the bottom line. Lastly, and equally importantly, is just the need to reduce environmental impacts. Historically, small and medium-sized businesses have often been very much focused on the bottom line and on their costs. However, we are seeing a distinct change now because of things like the 2045 target being set. We're seeing small and medium-sized businesses really looking at actually how they can proof themselves for the future and put themselves in a position where, what are often family-run businesses can make sure that they're in a good shape to be able to hand on to the next generation. So therefore, looking at, how they can, mitigate and avoid their impacts on the environment are very important. And we also see that for their customers. So customers, we see 70% of people wanting to know how environmentally friendly a business is. 42% of people will pay more for environmentally friendly products and services as well. And, we can expect that to change, only increase going forwards as well. So when businesses are looking to make changes, we really understand that small and medium-sized businesses are often faced by lots of different barriers. And it can be really difficult, even with the best will in the world, for those businesses to actually overcome those barriers. And that's fundamentally where the Resource Efficient Scotland programme is there to help. So, for instance, businesses can most commonly be faced with just the challenges around making time to do this work. And that's where we've got a set of dedicated advisors who will handhold them through the entire process of accessing support through our programme and helping them to implement measures. So we've got a team covering Scotland, and those advisors will help them to go through sort of the paperwork in order to, access the support we can provide, understand where they currently are with their business, understand where they think the opportunities lie, but also make suggestions as to where other opportunities might be worth considering, and in making sure that all of that is taken forward and looked at by the support we can provide. We then also, as far as overcoming the lack of technical skills, lots of large businesses will often have engineers sitting, within the business who can sort of do that work. But for small and medium-sized businesses, they often don't have that technical knowledge on how they can improve their processes or their building fabric or their building heating and lighting. And that's where we've got a team of technical specialists. So we've got a framework of consultants based across Scotland who actually can go into the site in most cases and actually spend a couple of hours walking around the site with the client and really understanding their business, discussing the opportunities with them, and actually giving them real assurance that the recommendations we're going to make to them are actually sound and very sensible investments to make. So as a result of that visit, what we'll produce is a report which will support that business going forward. So that report is produced by the consultant, and it will document the opportunities and the recommendations that we suggest are right for that business, and it'll document the expected energy or cost savings associated with it, the likely cost of implementation, and therefore the payback associated with implementing that measure. But it'll also document things like the risks associated with implementing that measure. So it really gives the business a strong understanding of how they can progress going forward. To also support the businesses, we'll also provide them with training and guidance documents. So we've got guidance on how to procure lighting and procure heating systems to help them through that process. And we've got exemplars. So we've got a website of exemplars so that a business, if they're looking at installing a heating system, they can look at other businesses similar to them that have also gone through that process and read about them, or even call them up or visit them to actually understand better their experience, to really overcome any uncertainty as to the sort of process that we're encouraging them to go forward through. Lastly, lots, and if not all, small, medium-sized businesses see lack of finance as being a real challenge to overcome. So financing these measures can be very difficult, and that's where again we can support them through things like the interest-free loan that we've currently got available, which also currently is coming with a 15% cashback. So we can not only direct them to that loan, but we can actually help them through the process of applying for that funding, overcoming any barriers in that process to ensure it's as smooth a process as possible. So just in detail, that SME loan that I mentioned, it's an interest-free loan of up to £100,000. It's 5% if you're looking to install measures that you can claim the RHI funding for. It's unsecured and there's no setup charges, and it's an 8-year repayment. So the majority of measures that people are installing tend to have repayments less than that. So that means that right off the bat, from as soon as they've installed the measures, they're often in a financially better off position than they would be otherwise. And they're now working with equipment that's more robust, more reliable, so they're overall in a much healthier position. And as I mentioned, in addition to that, we've now got a 15% cashback that is immediately an incentive to install these measures. So all of that can lead from a business going from being inefficient with risks of possibly old lighting or heating systems failing or processes that are struggling, to a much more efficient business that's well set to go forward to the future. And just to sort of give you an idea of scale, since the program started in 2013, we've supported now over 3,000 businesses across Scotland to implement measures, which has had a huge impact on those businesses, making sure that they're more financially secure and resource efficient. To hear from one, now what I want to do is hand you over to Andrew McFarlane from ACS Clothing.
Hello. My name is Andrew McFarlane and I'm the Operational Excellence Manager for ACS Clothing. Our business traditionally was to provide wholesale hireware all across the UK through retailers like Slater's, Debenhams and lots of smaller independent stores, along with our own store, Gilt Edge in Glasgow's Salt Market. The challenges we faced were we came across escalating energy costs across the board. In 2018, we've seen our energy costs jump 10%. Within the company, we had a growing awareness that through engagement with staff and feedback from our customers, that sustainability was becoming a bigger issue. At the time, all of our strategic focus was on expansion into the US, and we weren't focusing on the UK, which meant a lot of our cash flow was being diverted to the US and couldn't be invested in anything that was going on into the UK. After our key people underwent Green Champions training from Resource Efficient Scotland, our CEO held a sustainability workshop and we decided on 2 strategic objectives. We were going to try to reduce our energy consumption by 10% over the next 3 years, and we wanted to reduce 50% our waste management costs. Building on our lean operations improvement, we established a series of cross-functional green teams to deliver the improvements. One team focused on energy reduction, and during their workshop, the company analysed energy consumption and explored opportunities for improvement. There was a unanimous agreement that it was fundamental that the company transition to LED lighting from our traditional fluorescent light bulbs. The team reached out to Zero Waste Scotland, and a member of the Resource Efficient Scotland initiative visited the company and explored the challenge with the team. The scope was increased to include LED lighting for the office areas and also to introduce motion detectors so that lights in unoccupied areas would be switched off. The crucial output from the meeting was that the information was shared about the SME loan fund. We were provided a loan of £100,000 with £10,000 cash back to go forward and install the LED lighting throughout the site. As part of the process, we were sent a representative from Resource Efficient Scotland, and they examined the various stages that we would have to go through. They looked at the lighting we were using, the lighting that was installed, and set out a plan for how we could install the lighting. We took 3 quotes from 3 different companies, and then the companies came in and did the entire installation for us. So our time was relatively free from our maintenance teams, and they wouldn't have been able to do it. It's only 2 guys. The lighting upgrades have allowed our business to drastically cut the amount of energy we use. In 2019, we reduced our electricity consumption by 25%, and this was an annual saving of £28,000, with most of that saving being attributed to LED lighting. Simply put, we couldn't have achieved these savings without the SME loan. We now consume less energy and spend less cash on energy and have significantly reduced our carbon footprint. This was our first step towards improving our sustainability as our business has grown and and sees sustainability as being a core to everything that we do. Going forward, over the next 3 years, we intend to expand into women's hire-wear, with garment rental services reducing waste, increasing the lifespan of garments, and achieving a more sustainable fashion industry. By doubling the number of times a woman wears a garment, you decrease its environmental footprint by 44%, and many of our garments are rented up to 20 times a year. The sustainability impact of our company is meteoric, and our growth in turnover in the next 5 years is expected to increase 5-fold. In 2019, we won the Vibes Award in the Leadership Scotland category, and we achieved a 70% reduction in our waste management costs, and 0 of our waste now goes to landfill. And ACS have now also entered into a knowledge transfer partnership with the University of West of Scotland to research and develop a bespoke state-of-the-art sanitisation tunnel which will help us process our garments in a more environmentally friendly manner. We are also now an SQA centre, able to deliver vocational qualifications, and will be taking on modern apprentices from the local area and from other groups such as unemployed, disabled and war veterans or ex-services. And we have also achieved the Bronze Award in the Healthy Working Lives. And I'm just going to leave you here with a little note there. That's from our CEO, Tony Burns, on how the management in the company perceived the SME loan process and the impact that it's had onto the business. And I can hand you back.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
Andrew. We'll hand over now to Paul. Oh no, sorry, is it Oliver?
Yep. So, my name is Oliver Byrne. I'm one of the technical advisors that performs the calculations and writes the report. And I've been asked to talk a little bit about that process. So I'm going to be focusing on our engagement with organisations and the approach we take, we require, and how our recommendations are driven by data. Some of the support that follows the initial engagement piece, as well as a couple of case studies from work that we've done in the past. So first of all, if we move on to the sort of engagement and approach, we recognise that companies and organisations are on a different stage of their journey to resource efficiency, to sustainability. And they join the program at different stages. So in order to maximise the value of our support, we have to recognise where they currently are and what they might be requiring. Some businesses may have key themes, key needs that we want to drill down on. Perhaps buildings are cold, perhaps costs are rising. We really want to make sure that the work we do focuses on the needs of the companies as well as the needs of the program. So we may encounter businesses that just simply want to review new ways to heat their premises, but we also may encounter businesses who know exactly what they want to do. They have the quotes available, they have the detailed heating system in mind. They simply want to have an understanding of what impact it would have. So we vary our support based on the requirements of the organisation. In terms of the information that we look at, well, we encounter businesses in many different ways, but the support we deliver comes either through a site visit or a telephone audit. We often find that either there is lots of available data or very little. And what we mean by data, the information, could be something as simple as the tariffs, the consumption of electricity. It might be the various operating hours. It might be looking at what's there, the equipment they have. Are they aware of the models that they have operating? Are they aware of their production levels if they're manufacturing, for example? So we have to tailor our support based on the information available. So I'll provide a very quick overview on those 4 squares within this matrix. The most ideal, I suppose, is a site visit with lots of available data. We are able to visit a site and perhaps take some further measurements that you may not be sort of reasonably expecting an organisation to provide. So we will bring equipment to perform tests. We're able to use this information that we gather and increase the accuracy of the calculations that we provide in our report with our recommendations. This is quite similar for the telephone audit. We're able to replicate a lot of the work that we would be able to do on a site visit over the phone, where measures are reasonable to do so. And perhaps the biggest reason we would have telephone audits might be something as simple as accessibility to a site. It's not always feasible to send advisors off to various parts of Scotland when we're able to perform a large amount of work over the phone and still provide some very accurate results, some accurate calculations that give a good, strong business case as to why you would want to pursue one opportunity over another. Where we have to use various estimates, various benchmarks, will come under the 3rd and 4th squares. So in number 3, where it's a site visit, we will do our best to gather that information on site if it's not readily available. And where it's a telephone audit, we will use our previous experience on similar projects. We will look at national data. We will take benchmark figures from industries in order to provide that first stage, that high-level review of what opportunities might be available in order to get the ball rolling, so to speak. What we end up using the data for, a quick slide here, is on the electricity consumption of an office. We're looking at the energy that is consumed on site for every half-hour period, and it follows a fairly simple pattern, rises as people enter the office, as systems turn on, peaks over those main operating hours, and then falls again when people go home. What we used this for was understanding the impact of a solar PV system so that they could generate electricity on site. We were able to take the information of their consumption and make sure that whatever system was recommended would have the best impact for them, for specific to that site. What we were able to find when we performed our calculations was that the consumption of the energy generated by that system, 95% of it was used on site. So here we have the same site, but the year following that installation, and we can see that in those months, particularly the summer months, their consumption on site, the energy that they've had to purchase from the grid has fallen drastically. And by performing these calculations, the sizing of that system was suited to that business, and they were able to see an annual cost benefit of about £9,000 per year. Their carbon impact fell by 28 tonnes of CO2 equivalent per year, and the payback period was around 7 years, which was very close in line with what was predicted, what was identified. So the actual savings were very close to what was identified, making sure that data was put to very good use, and it was able to lead to the measure being implemented. After we've performed that initial piece of engagement, there's various pieces of support that we can help with. The main idea of the program is to identify the savings, but also have those savings implemented. What John mentioned right at the start would be very much in line with what we work on here. So this may be application support. It might be looking to write those loan applications or support with that. It may be comparing quotes that have been obtained. It might very well be that those initial measures weren't quite suitable and further ones are being explored in the future. So we don't simply stop the support after that first piece of engagement. We will make sure that it moves forward and it progresses, and that true changes are actually seen. So some of the case studies that we've got here, the first is Paterson Arran. Now these are now part of Burton's Biscuits Company. One of the projects that we worked on here, this was a site visit that involved an initial overall energy audit. So there was no specific requirement. They weren't looking to try and replace one piece of machinery. They wanted someone to come visit the site and have a walk around and identify what they would perceive to be good opportunities to reduce energy consumption. One of the key measures identified here was that the air compressors, the network of pipes that took that compressed air around was leaking, and this was identified on that walk around, and it was able to be measured on site to provide some accuracy as to how much of an impact this would have, how much energy was being lost, how much energy costs were going towards this leakage, what the carbon impact would be, so that when an opportunity to rectify this was made, it had good data behind it. The business case could be presented, and as accurate as possible, the savings were displayed. Additional to this, there were various energy monitoring opportunities that were available. There was the replacement of some bay lighting. which would be now made into LED, and the air compressor itself was being changed into a variable speed compressor. So it was something quite specific to the needs of the company. This was all implemented, and the payback period observed was less than a year. So it was a very clear business case to make some key changes and obtain some fairly low-hanging fruit in terms of savings. Now, Adam Wilson provides a quick quote there to show that it was actually something that was quite successful. The next case study involved a hotel, and this was performed over a telephone call. Part of the problem here was they were expecting to increase their season. The electricity costs of heating were quite high, but they wanted to make sure that they could still run over the winter. They currently had electric heating, and that was responsible for 62% of all of their electricity costs. So they wanted to come to the program with a very specific issue in mind. They would like to make their heating system more efficient so that they could run all year round. Now, the energy they were expecting to have increased by extending the season was 46%, and under the current heating conditions, that would require quite a lot more money being pumped into it. So they wanted to explore biomass boilers, and through a telephone audit, we were able to obtain all the relevant information. They had quotes available that were included within the report so that it was very relevant, and they used the report to support a loan application, which they received, and they have now implemented those measures and received the benefits. Part of that was £20,000 worth of heating fuel saved. There was also some benefit from the RHI, and this led to a 6-year payback period for that measure. So both through site visit or through phone call, we were able to really understand what the business required, make sure that our recommendations were relevant to them, that they had a strong business case behind them, and most importantly, they were implemented and those savings were seen. I'm now going to pass on to Paul Adley, who will take it forward from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oliver.
So probably just my idea here is to summarise and pull together maybe some of the information you've covered in the GRES programme and the case studies, and how this really can impact and improve or help you strengthen those.
Sorry, Paul, we're struggling to hear you slightly.
I really want to set some context, and I think from the message from the Bank of England governor in September was that he made a very clear point
around that a new financial system needs to be built and is being built to actually implement low carbon policies and climate change policies. I mean, we accelerate that transition as an economy, as individual businesses, and as people who support businesses as advisors to that low carbon future. He did stress that we're not moving fast enough, and the task is large, and the window of opportunity is short, and there are risks, but we need to do something, and we need to act quickly. And he made two relevant points, I think, for the work that we, through the RES programme, and hopefully with the work that you do with your clients, is that businesses need to adapt to a low carbon world, and those that will and do will be rewarded, but those that don't will cease to exist in that future world, which is really coming upon us. The other key point he mentioned was really finance and the finance profession are a catalyst to support all companies that are working on that transition to a low carbon business model. So it's not just the ones that are already the producers of electric vehicles or LED lighting, but the actual businesses and the SMEs that make up the backbone of our economy. How does finance and the finance and banking community help them make that change? And so really it was a very clear message, I think, to the banking community. And the expectation is that people there's an expectation that the banking community will help make this happen at the coalface when you go out and meet clients. And I think I'm just going to try and summarise some reflections that I've had really from the programme, but also from having conversations with bankers over the recent months. There's an opportunity, I suppose, for bankers to go beyond expectations, and you're always looking for interventions to help businesses improve their profitability, improve their cash flow.
So what the Resource Efficient Scotland programme is offering is a new intervention for you to have a wider conversation with businesses when you talk to about how can their business improve and what are the areas of their operating costs in particular that could be reduced. And I think the West Highland Hotel is a really good example of that. I mean, we've seen there that a reduction in energy costs enables the all year round season, all year round opening of a hotel financially viable. It increased their income. And beyond that, it also enabled their reputation to be enhanced because they subsequently went on to win a Gold Business Tourism Award, which obviously improves their marketing credentials. What we've probably covered from what Oliver has talked about is that, and from John as well, and what Andrew has covered in his presentation, is that Resource Efficient Scotland provides a very practical and feasible advice that helps clients move to that low carbon business model. It's really working with where the business is now, but maybe helping them see a little bit further ahead. So, it's an opportunity for your clients not only to see where they can change, but actually there's backup support and practical guidance for them to do that. And overall, I mean, the Resource Efficient Scotland programme, gets a 9 out of 10 thumbs up from companies that have gone through the programme, and it really is hopefully a positive influence on the net promoter score that I know a lot of bankers and banking organisations focus on clearly, and hopefully by doing something different, adding something that a client wants to expect from you, then that will feed back through that score. I'd like to hand over to John, who is going to take us through maybe how your clients can access the programme.
Thank you very much, Paul. Fundamentally, hopefully we're getting across to the audience that, the RES programme, it's a trusted programme. 9 out of 10 businesses would recommend it to similar businesses. Also, as Oliver was sort of talking about the sort of types of support we provide, in virtually all cases, we'll actually send a consultant out on site. It's only about 15%, and often that's because they want a very quick turnaround where we'll sort of do it by telephone-based support, and we've got a network of consultants based on the whole of Scotland to facilitate that. So as I mentioned before, we've supported over 3,000 businesses since the programme's inception, and currently we're running at supporting about 800 businesses each year to give them support, give them audits, and actually make a difference. What that means is that over the course of the programme, we've identified over £200 million worth of cost savings for Scottish businesses. And most importantly, it's not just identifying those measures. Around half of those identified savings go on to be implemented, which is a phenomenal improvement for the businesses we support, and they benefit from that as a result. Typically, what that means for SMEs is it's around a £50,000 saving for each business over the lifetime of those measures. So it's a really significant benefit. And just try and put that into a different sort of perspective, typically we can identify around 24% savings on their energy bills. So it really does make a big difference. Also, importantly, we support businesses across the whole of Scotland, so it doesn't matter where they're based, whether that's in the Central Belt or out in the islands, we'll give them the same level of quality service to ensure that they are supported as best we possibly can. So as far as actually making referrals, where someone's working with a small business and they think there's an opportunity for them to benefit from this programme, of course, you can just tell them about the programme and you can pass on our contact details to them. But what we see is when that happens is actually the number of businesses that then keep it on top of their in-tray. It doesn't just get buried and forgotten about. It tends to be very small. So, where recommendations are made, then often it's only maybe 1 in 10 who actually then pick up the phone and actually contact us. So while that's great, and if people can do that, we really appreciate it, it's much more valuable if actually someone who's working with an SME can actually pass on that SME or the person at that small business, their details to us, and then we will take it forward with that business. So if you can pass on their contact details to our email address or phone the free phone number, then we'll then contact them within 48 hours. One of our experts will then conduct that free assessment. They'll get the free report, and then we'll, most importantly, provide that ongoing support to them beyond that to make sure the report doesn't get buried, to help them to implement the measures, to help them to access the financial support. It is really about an end-to-end hand-holding service. And again, once they've gone through that process, they can come back for more support. So it's not that they get one hit and that's it, they're left. We work with businesses repeatedly, year on year in some instances, where they want to do one thing, now they want to look at another thing, and we see real progression with those companies taking access from our support multiple times. And really, that's it from our perspective. It's really just to encourage people to take the opportunity to refer businesses into our program. Where you're doing that on a regular basis, we can even have a sort of nominated person who can sort of liaise with you and accept those referrals directly to make it as smooth a process as possible, so that then if you're not sure what's happened, you can contact that person up and find out what's been happening with that client. And if at that point, if there's any questions, then myself, Paul, Oliver and Andrew would be very happy to answer them.
Thank you for listening, everyone. If you've got any questions, if you submit them via the chat box, the guys will be happy to answer. I have a couple of questions here as well. So one main question that I would ask would be, I think this would be more directed to yourself, John. How quickly can an SME get the support?
So very quickly. I mean, typically on average, where a business engages with us, then, or we get their contact details, we'll go straight back to that business within, a very short space of time, usually within a day or two, to sort of progress that. And on average, it takes around about, most commonly, it's sort of between 5 and 10 days to get the sort of all the paperwork filled in and completed, going back and forth with them to, clarify exactly what they want to get included, and then it'll get allocated out to a consultant. The consultant, that process of arranging with the client for a visit, doing the visit, producing the report, that report being QA'd and then being issued out to the client, typically takes around 20 working days. However, that said, we've done work before where we've been supporting businesses who are on extremely tight timelines, and that's where we can use things like telephone audits, where literally we've turned it around within a couple of days from the initial inquiry coming into actually the report being issued.
Great, thank you. I've got a question from the audience here. Does RES also support solo businesses?
Yes, is the quick answer. So we'll support all sizes of business, so even sole traders, someone who works out of a van or a chip shop van or ice cream vans. We've done all sorts of different things. We've supported businesses that are working out of boats. So a whole range of types of businesses. You can't be too small, and we will still support you where there's something meaningful that we can support them with. Obviously, so someone working out of their home office, the energy costs for that home office would have to be significant. Otherwise, really, it would be more treated as a domestic property. But generally speaking, yeah, you don't have to be a limited company or anything like that in order to access the support.
Another audience question here. Is the support only available to Scottish businesses?
It's available to sites that are based in Scotland. So you don't have to be a Scottish business. You could be a business that's based, that their head office is in England or abroad, but you've got a site based in Scotland, and we're supporting that site. Again, importantly, they have to be a small or medium-sized enterprise, and that's defined by the EU rules. So you have to have sort of less than 250 employees, and that's within you and the wider company structure. But again, we'll help the businesses to understand, that process, and we'll help them check their eligibility to see if they're actually eligible for that support.
Great, thanks. Oliver, this one might be more for you, I'm not sure. Is support available to startup/early stage companies?
So as John had mentioned, yes, there will be support available. We commonly will come up and advise on business plans. Perhaps someone is looking to set up a new premises somewhere within Scotland and they would like some advice on what is the best kit to install, perhaps what machinery or what lighting is recommended to be putting into the site. And I suppose it's less on the design stage of that, but more identifying what would the impacts be if you were to invest more money to acquire more efficient equipment. So we would be able to show the benefit of going that little bit extra mile to pay for the most efficient bit of kit. And so that's where some of the support comes from. In terms of the funding, there are some slight rules on that, which I'm sure John can cover due to the time operating as a business, and it's probably best for him to cover that one.
Yep, I can do that. So yeah, just following on from what Oliver said, we can do effectively sort of design work and new processes, new sort of products and systems that businesses are looking to implement, and even to some extent new businesses, but they have to be fairly well down that path. There are other support mechanisms through such like the Business Gateway for new businesses, new business startups, which tends to be more focused on the business process itself. Also, sometimes if they're looking at sort of processes or projects which are more about developing businesses which are going to support a new circular economy, then again there's other sort of funding streams that can sort of support them with that. But we do act as sort of a one-stop shop. So therefore, if a business comes to us and we think actually the best support is available through a different channel, then we'll refer them on to that. We won't just say no. In addition to what Oliver was hinting at with regard to the SME loan, to access the SME loan, the business has to have been trading for at least 1 year. So they can still get the report from us, but actually to access the loan, you have to be trading for at least 1 year.
Great, thank you. I think I've got one more question here. How long will the cashback be available?
That's a good question. It's a first come first served basis pot, so it's not possible to say exactly how long it would run for. Equally, that pot might get topped up again. Our understanding at this point in time is that we're not expecting that pot to finish anytime soon. When I say soon, we're talking at least months. At the very earliest, you're probably talking towards the end of end of this year. And that, I think the cashback that's currently available would last until then, I would expect. But we don't know. It depends very much on demand. It depends on what comes through on that scheme. So it is first come, first served. So we would encourage people not to wait and not to assume that the cashback will always be there, because it has, it wasn't there in the past. It might not be there again in the future. It's very much dependent on sort of available funding coming through from Scottish Government.
Great, thank you. So that's it for questions. Thank you everyone for listening. I would like to thank John, Andrew, Oliver and Paul for providing such an insightful webcast, and of course to our listeners. For members of the Chartered Banker Institute, today's webcast can be recorded as part of your ongoing CPD. Please remember to record this via the logbook in the members area of the website. The slide pack will be available to all listeners after today's presentation. We would also welcome your feedback on today's webcast. Once again, we'd like to thank you for your participation and thank you for listening. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Heather.